All right, I think we need to talk also about the elephant in the room, which is the Australian top four, and just a test team because the Ashes is on the horizon, and it is best that we address the West Indian series. In my opinion, the best way possible is that I think what we've seen today is that their bowling is good, their batting isn't, and I think this is a series where you can take a few risks, rest a few players, and think towards the Ashes because that's how, at least from my point of view, Australia, obviously you want to win every match. Like the World Test Championship is the peak for me, at least, anyway. But like so is the Ashes and the BGT. And with the Ashes looming large, and with England posing, in my opinion, the most serious threat that I've consciously seen, like past 15 years, to our shores, I think we need to talk about the actual order. So right now, this is the Australian team. You would imagine that some combination of Conscious. There'll be a different issue. The top three may change, and Inglis will switch out for Steve Smith. But you think this is pretty set, and then you could argue Cam Green here, but I'll get into that in a sec. There's a lot going wrong with this top three right now, and in this case, top four. And I think we're struggling with a few things. Is that one? I don't like the notion that people aren't putting their hands up at the domestic level. People are, but we'll get to that in a sec. I'm just focusing on the West Indies series for now. So we look at Consus, Kawaja, Green, Inglis. You will assume that Steve Smith comes back in at four, and this doesn't change for the whole series. They may bring Marnus back in some capacity. From at least my personal opinion, not what I would do, but what I think will happen. I think you could see Marnus back in for Green or Consus at some point. And I think we will see Steve Smith back for the third test, maybe for Inglis. I don't think this is the right approach, if you ask me. I think right now we should be looking towards the Ashes with this batting lineup. And if we take a look at this, I'm not going to be flying any players over. Like I won't be flying McSweeney or whichever domestic player you may have your eye on. I'm just focusing on the next two matches. So as you can see, this is our test squad. Um, I look at this lineup and I think, okay, who would I play where? So if you look at the true batters, we have Marnus in the wings, we have Steve Smith in the wings here. Going back to this team, I think it's important that I think we have to strip down to the principles. Is that we have to back in certain players to play these roles because giving them one or two games here and there will not be sufficient for knowing how good they actually are in the Ashes and providing us with, you know, providing us information. Like truth be told, right now Sam Constance is probably my fourth or fifth choice opener, but he's here, and honestly, I'd rather him play the whole series than Usman Khawaja. Um, I think we have to look at this. We have to look at it as a building towards the future. So I guess this brings me to my next thing: is that this is how I line up for the second and third test. So I think it's just like this is about how I would go. So the way that I see it is that Sam Conscious, well, I'll be honest, he doesn't look up to it. He simply doesn't look up to it, and he didn't look up to it in Shield cricket either towards the end of the season. Um, like he looks like he should be throwing his other. It's clear that he struggles with the ball that comes back in. You could see that from when even the game where he took Bumrah down in his first match was that Bumrah was very unlucky not to get him out of the first. So the amount of balls that were still coming back into him and he was struggling to hit was sensational. Like was amazing. And then all of a sudden he probably got into Bumrah's head a bit. Um, that's the only innings that's keeping him in the team right now. I think it was right to just select him at the time. And I think he should play at the West Indies series, even though Kawaja is a better batter than he is. I think we have more to gain by playing Sam Constas now. And this is where my second opinion comes in, is that I believe that we should drop Usman Khawaja. And I've been thinking we should drop Usman Khawaja for a while. I was actually thinking Usman's place was, up for debate before the Border Gavaskar Trophy. Personally, I would have actually moved on from him by now, but the Australian team hasn't. And I actually wouldn't move on from him yet because the Ashes are still around the corner. But I think for now, I didn't mind what I saw from Marnus opening batting in the World Test Championship. I think he looked better than Usman has, and I think he looked better than Constance has in this match. And he's a great fielder. And trust me, this is not a long-term selection, but I wouldn't mind seeing Marnus open at least for the West Indies to see if he can do it. Because I know we talk about players playing out of position, but to me, watching him bat, he looks like he could be an opener. Like he's got a strong defense. He's usually out there when Warner was batting. He was out there early anyway, and I think it actually allows him to, as dumb as it sounds like, not like I don't really know much about the psyche of an artist, but he does seem to think a lot and talk like his way. Just gets out there and he's batting straight away. I think that could almost be an asset to him, and I wouldn't mind. I don't want to give up on the experiment. I wouldn't mind seeing matches 2 and 3, 2 more Test matches against a decent bowling lineup, which will give a better indication to is he actually an option to open for the Ashes? Because truth be told, I think we have better options at opening and number 3 in the team. Cam Green, I would also stick with, and I don't think he's a true number 3. But if I'm really being honest, people talk about he's batting the Shield easily good enough to be. Has it been better than Webster the past few years? No. So how does he get into this team if he can't bat at 3? The spots available right now at 3, 1, 2, and 3. That's where the spots are. So why is he not playing there? And I guess same goes for Inglis. Is that? But I'll talk a bit more about Green. Is that particularly if he's not bowling, he isn't good enough to be in this team. But we've put him in 3. We do. I think in general he does have a pretty strong defence. I think it does seem that he has a big weakness outside off stump at the moment at fishing at balls, which is probably why he shouldn't be at 3. But his actual temperament, the way he bats, to me suggests that someone that builds in. Like, he isn't someone that goes out there and swings. He builds an innings, and 3 could be the right spot for him, or 4. But I think if he's not 5, he can't bat at 5 or 6. So why are we putting him down? And people can talk, maybe we should push head up to 4, put Smith at 3, Webster at 5, then consider like Inglis or other options at 6. But to me, that's a possibility. But right now, the spot is up at 3. That can be decided once we get a bit of sense of players' form in the Sheffield Shield. Same goes to Inglis. I actually wouldn't rush Steve Smith back because we know when the Ashes comes around, Steve Smith will be batting number 4. I want to see more of Josh Inglis. I want to know if he is a real deal or he isn't. Because watching him bat, he's definitely not number 4. He's a 6 or 7. He's a proper keeper. He's a swinger. He has bad decision making on his shots. It's clear he's a one-day player. But I wouldn't mind seeing a bit more at number 4 because again, the spots are at 3 and 4. Can he do it? Spots are at 3. So we have, in my opinion, we don't need to rush Steve Smith back. We should be able to win at least 2 of these games without him. 2 more, but at least 1 more without him. And I know the World Test Championship matters, and Australia has a pretty hard cycle with the aging list where we'll be playing India, and I know they've got their own troubles, but they've just got more depth. They'll find options eventually. And England and Australia and South Africa there. That's a pretty hard cycle where we might want to bank wins now out of the hope to make it. But I still think we will. And you have to think to the future. I think it's better that we get a bit more experience into these players and not just throw the toys out of the cot. Because it was one question, what's he going to contribute in the long term of this 2-year cycle? Nothing. He will retire after the Ashes. I'm personally not sure he even is the opener of choice for this team, but he's definitely gone after the Ashes. So I think this is what I'm thinking about. I'm like, well, why do we need to pick him? And okay, so yeah, I think Bo Webster has earned the right to be number 6 over any of those players. He's earned it. Carey against 7, same thing. I think he's proven that he's a better batter than Inglis as well. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen enough of Inglis's keeping. He's good, but I think Carey's a bit better. Anyway, for the bowling lineup, you might notice one notable omission for each match. And I'm basing this around the assumption that typically as the series goes on, Mitchell Starc becomes a worse bowler. So I'd give Starc the first 2 matches, rest him for match 3. And Josh Hazelwood's body is not what it used to be anymore. He gets injured a lot. So I do not want him to overbowl himself. I know he didn't have the hugest workload this match, but the way I see it is that this guy, except maybe in the Ashes, should really be avoiding bowling back-to-back tests. The Ashes will probably be the last time he might have to. I would hate for him to break down here and him not be ready for the Ashes. I wouldn't, particularly if we win match 2, you could probably maybe switch the line out for Kuhnemann. Just to give a bit more of a look at Kuhnemann, because again, with our spinners, we're only getting a look at them in subcontinent conditions. I don't think Kuhnemann's looked that good, to be honest. I think he's looked okay. He looked better in Sri Lanka than in India. But overall, I wouldn't mind seeing him something a bit different, like a different condition. So that means when Lyon does eventually, or we might, because I don't think Lyon isn't quite as good as he used to be. He actually had a good Test Championship cycle, but I do feel in general he's past year hasn't been that good. Like he didn't have that good of an India series. I think a lot of games he shouldn't have actually played in, and then Sri Lanka only looked okay, I thought, and nothing in the World Test Championship. Not much. This match was hard to tell. So I wouldn't mind maybe seeing Kuhneman, but Lyon will be playing past the Ashes, so I don't see why we don't pick him. Stark and Hazelwood, I'm actually not sure if they will be playing past the Ashes, but in saying that, they're both bowling amazingly. But I think we're only given 2 matches each because of that. And Scott Boland, again, we get to see more of him in different conditions. I don't see why we don't bowl or rotate more, particularly when we have options like Boland, Nisa, and Abbott is in the squad as well. I mean, we could always give Abbott a bowl as well if there's injuries, but that's how I would structure it. I think we have to remember that we're looking towards the future and that we're probably a better team than the West Indies. We should be winning the 3 games, regardless of if Steve Smith plays or not, regardless of how the top order does. Because so I'd rather try a few things and back a few different players in. Trust me, this is not what I want the squad to look like come the first test of the Ashes. I'll be having more discussions around that then. But I think for at least a very short term, these are the top 4. That's how I want to structure the top 4. That's how I want to back in. Like, we know Steve Smith's going to be there, but I want to see a bit more from these other players. I just want to see more. And because it's coming. The fall off of Australian cricket is coming. And yeah, like, I want to see these guys be given a crack a bit more now. Like, we have to remember that Constance is 19, Green's 26. Like, these guys are going to be here for the next 5 to 10 years, or 15 in Constance's case potentially. Like, they will be among the setup. I'm not saying they'll be in the team, but they'll be among the setup. And these are the guys we need to back in and trust, particularly with the current squad we have, because we don't need to fly players over. Anyway, I don't think we'll do that personally. I think Australia will bring Smith in, drop Inglis, potentially bring Marnus back, drop Green or Constance. But at some point, but I personally, that's how I would approach it. It's a bit different. It's a bit more. It's not necessarily the biggest win now move, but I still think we'll win these matches regardless. So why not try it? As for the T20s, I've got my opinions on that as well. We'll make a separate video probably at the end of the series. I don't think Hazelwood, but for short term, I don't think Hazelwood should be in that squad. That's simple. Yep, and I might bring a first test preview once they name the squads for the test. I would love to honestly approach the West Indies team, but maybe post series, and I don't know enough about Windies domestic cricket yet to properly make an assessment of this. All right, thanks.